soil is fertile, the air is clean, and the forests are green. I shall go rally the other settlers. I shall call this place Catan.
The Settlers of Catan is a dice-rolling, resource-trading game where players build and develop settlements, construct cities and connect them by building roads, all on the Isle of Catan. From round to round, players will roll a pair of dice and trigger the production of different types of resources on different hex tiles. Players will make trade agreements with other players with the hope of expanding their settlement as quickly as possible, whilst trying to escape the wrath of the robber. The player to reach 10 victory points first will win the game. To set up a game of Settlers of Catan, build the island by firstly building the frame, then shuffling the hex tiles, and finally distributing them across the inside of the frame randomly. Order the numbered tokens in alphabetical order, and starting from the corner of the map, place them in an anti-clockwise direction, starting from the outs of the isle, heading your way towards the center of the isle, skipping the desert tile as you go. The numbers on the tokens correspond with the number obtained when rolling 2 dice. The dots refer to the chance that the number will be rolled. The more dots, the more likely it is for that resource to be produced throughout a game. Each player gathers their settlement, city, and road pieces of their corresponding chosen color, and the robber is then placed on the desert tile. There are 6 different types of terrain in the game, with only 5 of them producing usable resources for the players. The hills produce bricks. The pasture produces wool. The mountains produce ore, the fields produce grain, the forest produces timber, and the desert produces no resource at all. Throughout the game, players will be aiming to collect a combination of these resources either via through trading agreements with other players, trading with a bank, or trading via seaports. Players will use a combination of these resources to build roads, settlements, cities, or gain development cards according to the building costs. Players then place the largest army and longest road achievement cards to the side of the board and shuffle the development card deck and place it within easy reach. The development cards provides players with victory points, knights, and bonuses that help players to improve their settlement. Beginning with the first player, players place one settlement and an adjoining road on any open intersection of their choice, going around in clockwise turn order, ensuring that no 2 settlements will ever be directly adjacent to each other. Starting with the last player and going in anti-clockwise turn order, players place their second settlement and adjoining road. The first player in the game will be the last person to place their second settlement. All players then gather 1 resource from each of the hex tiles that is currently connected to the junction of their 2 settlements.
The winner of the game is the first player to reach 10 victory points. Victory points can be earned by any combination of the following methods:
building settlements, each worth 1 victory point, building cities, building the longest connecting road, or having the largest army are each worth 2 victory points, and players can also collect a range of victory points from development cards purchased throughout a game. In Settlers of Catan, starting with the first player, players take turns to roll the pair of dice. The number that is rolled triggers the production of the particular resource for the round. Players who have settlements or cities adjacent to the activated hex tile gain the resource from the bank. Settlements produce 1 resource and cities produce 2 resources. Different resources on different hex tiles have different rarities, and this is determined by the luck of the dice roll. Resource tiles that have the numbers 6 and 8 on them are more likely to be rolled than resource tiles that have the number 12 or 2 on them. The active player can then pay for buildings or development cards according to their cost. They can also trade resources with other players by making a deal with them. Development cards and resource cards that are the same cannot be traded. If a player has 4 of the same resource, they can trade it into the bank for 1 other resource of their choice. Players who have a settlement at a trading port can also trade resources using the conversion rate shown. If a player rolls a 7, the number with the highest probability, the active player can move the robber to any hex tile of their choice and block the production of that hex tile, meaning that when that number is rolled, players can't claim resources from that hex. Then, if any player has more than 7 resource cards, they must discard half of them.
Then, the player who placed the robber on the new hex may steal a random resource card from a player whose settlement or city is adjacent to that hex. As players expand their settlement, players will vie for different public objectives such as building the longest road. Building one segment of road costs 1 brick and 1 timber. The road must always be connected to at least one of your settlements or cities. The first player to build the longest road, not counting forks, with at least 5 continuous connecting segments takes the special longest road card. If another player then succeeds in building a longer road than the previous player, then that player then claims the special longest road card. New settlements can be built by paying 1 brick, 1 wood, 1 grain and 1 wool. New settlements can only be placed on hex junctions if they satisfy 2 conditions. Firstly, if they're connected via one of your roads, and secondly, the other adjacent junctions are vacant. Settlements can be upgraded into cities by paying 3 ore and 2 grain and replacing an existing settlement with a city. That city now gains 2 resources each time an adjacent hex tile produces. Development cards provide players with knights, victory points, or progress cards. Purchased development cards can be kept face down so other players do not know what you have drawn. Development cards can be played the turn after they have been purchased, and only 1 development card can be played per turn. Players who play a knight card can immediately move the robber to any hex tile and thus blocking the tile's resource producing effect. If the active player has at least 3 knights, they receive the largest army card worth 2 victory points. If another player later has more knights, the special card gets passed to them and they gain the 2 extra victory points. If a progress card is played, follow its rules and resolve it before discarding the card completely from the game. Victory points should be kept hidden until you feel as though you have enough to win the game. Victory point development cards can always be played immediately if you desire. The first player to reach 10 victory points earned via any combination of settlements, cities, the longest road card, the largest army card, or victory point development cards will win the game.
If this is your first time playing Settlers of Catan, I'm going to share with you some tips and strategies that will hopefully help you win your first game. When placing your first settlement at the beginning of the game, try and place it on a junction that is adjacent to 3 different hex resource producing tiles. That will ensure that you get at least 3 out of the 5 different resources that you need in order to take all the actions throughout a game. Second of all, try and pick a junction that is adjacent to a numbered disc that has a high chance of being rolled when rolling with 2 dice. Thirdly, try and pick a junction that is close to a trading port that you can use halfway or mid to end of the game to help you get those resources that you really need to finish off your settlements and upgrade them into cities. Second tip is, if you're going to pick a particular port to build a settlement on, it's really important to have a look at what hex tiles are close by. For example, if I have a settlement on a wheat producing hex tile and the port that converts 2 wheat into any resource that I like is nearby, then that is a port that I really want to build on, because being able to convert 2 wheat into any resource that I want will really help you to broaden your options and expand the options and choices that you have throughout the game compared to the other players who don't have that benefit or that access to that conversion rate. Next tip, it's really important to be aware at the beginning of the game, roads are going to be what players are going to try and build first. So brick and timber are going to be quite highly contested. So having a sufficient supply of brick and timber to help you build those roads and expand your settlements across the island before the other players is going to be important so that you don't get blocked out mid to late game by other players who built their longest road first. The next tip is, when you use the robber, try and use the robber strategically. If there is a player that is massively in the lead, it's really important to place the robber on a resource production tile that player or leading player needs in order to win the game. By hindering their ability to gain a resource will stop them from winning the game before you can have any chance to catch up to them. So using the robber on the right player on the right resource hex tile is really crucial for giving you some leverage and a little bit more of an advantage. Another tip is that early in the game you should try and upgrade your settlements into cities. Once you upgraded them into cities, you can actually double the amount of resource that each of the adjacent hex tiles produces. That means instead of 1 brick, you get 2 bricks, and that means more resources for you to trigger and conduct those actions and expand your settlement at a much more higher rate. Finally, it's really important to be aware that all players begin a game of Catan with 2 victory points. The 2 starting settlements are worth a victory point each, so players only really need to gain 8 more victory points in order to win the game. So it's really important to have a diverse range of strategies when trying to get those victory points and not just relying on trying to get the longest road. Try and balance it out by trying to have the biggest army, upgrading to cities, putting more settlements. Having a diversified range of ways of getting those 8 victory points to get you to the 10 victory point mark is going to help you win the game more confidently and successfully. Before I go, I have one final tip for all those avid Catan players out there. Be nice to your neighbours and be nice to the other players. Being nice to the other players means they're going to be more open to establishing a trade agreement or trade deal with you in order to help you successfully progress in this game. Without the partnership and the trading agreements that you have with the other players, then you're going to find yourself really struggling a lot. So remember, karma does bite you back. So be nice, and if you do, you'll rise to the top. Thank you for joining me in this How to Play Video Settlers of Catan. If you really like my videos, please like, subscribe and share. I really look forward to seeing you again soon. This is Danny signing out. Goodbye.